All right. Hello again, people of the internet. Welcome to part one of our plate carrier overview series. What we'll be doing in this series is going over some of the popular slick, scalable plate carriers on the market and comparing them and talking about the pros and cons of each one, as well as maybe at the end picking one that is sort of the best of the lot as an overall best slick/scalable plate carrier. So to start off with part one here, we're just going to go over a couple of quick things about the current gen Slickster by Ferro Concepts. I'm sure this is not going to be mind-blowing to anybody because this is pretty much an ubiquitous plate carrier at this point, and there's a million reviews out there for this thing. So this isn't really going to be a review because you all know that already. This is going to be more like a quick overview of the thing and then talking about some of the good and meh features of this carrier. So, I guess the first thing we'll get to is the overall carrier. I'm not including the cummerbund in this review because it's a freaking elastic cummerbund that we all know what it is. It's nothing unique between what this and anyone else includes with their similar plate carriers, so there's no point in me talking about it. It's a elastic cummerbund with cells to put things in. Everyone pretty much makes the same thing at this point, so there you have it. As far as the plate carrier goes, this is the version, I believe this is the current gen, and then it has also the laser cut moly on the back, for reasons I'll talk about later. Alright, so basically we have our front panel here. The nice thing about the front panel is, well, let's start with that. Unlike the back panel, they only put I think 4-inch piece of loop Velcro at the bottom here, because for some reason they only apparently want you to use it with their elastic cummerbund or similar elastic cummerbunds. But on the front, they still got a normal sized piece of cummerbund, a normal sized piece of Velcro. Anyways, obviously they did this so that you could run, a placard on the front, which are sized for normal sized cummerbunds. However, I don't get why they wouldn't have also included a standard, 6-inch piece of Velcro on the back. I mean, you already gave us one on the front. Was it really that hard to also put the same thing on the back? Like, what did you save doing this? 30 cents, 50 cents? Like, there was literally no reason for them to do that. And the first gripe that I'll get into with this is the fact that this cuts down your ability to modify and kind of scale this thing up. So because you can only use the elastic type 4-inch cummerbunds, this makes it a lot more difficult to add on a different cummerbund if you want to scale this thing up to a more overall. The good news is the front Velcro is still sized for a basic cummerbund that would be 5 inches wide or 3 standard rows of moly. On the downside, anything you put on the back is not going to fully engage with this Velcro. Depending on the type of cummerbund you use, that may or may not be that big a deal. If you're using a cummerbund that has 5-inch Velcro across the whole thing, that's not so big of a deal. If you want to use something that's a little bit more stripped down though, like this Velocity Systems cummerbund I had laying around in a drawer. Yes, it still has the tag on it because it was laying in a drawer in storage. As you can see, Once you put that on here, it hits the top, bottom two, but the third one is kind of just hanging in limbo, not attached to anything. So, because they didn't put this extremely simple and basic 6-inch piece of Velcro in the back, like pretty much most other carriers do, you can't add certain other cummerbunds to this. Whether that's an issue for you, it's going to be up to you. The other thing that I find a bit annoying is, again, the lack of hook Velcro on the back side of the flap. I got the Molly-backed version specifically because I wanted the flap to go over the cummerbund in the back. I think that plate carriers that don't have a flap to cover the cummerbund in the back and to also help to hold it in place is, in my opinion, a poor design choice. And it's just being it's being basic because the market will put up to it. It's kind of a cop-out. There you go, I said it. Anyways, so I got this Molly version because I wanted the flap to cover the cummerbund in order to help stop it from being pulled off, as well as to help keep it in place. However, the fact that this doesn't have even a 4-inch piece of Velcro on the bottom to go over the cummerbund that's there is lame. And again, I don't see why they wouldn't have done that, considering you're talking a minimal amount of extra expense and time to put that on there. If you have your own sewing machine, which I do, this is actually a pretty easy fix. You just sew it on yourself. But in my opinion, they went out of the way to make a Molly back panel with a flap that goes over it. Why not just finish the thing like it should be finished and be done with it in one shot? So, I don't know. Most of the plate carriers in this sort of slick scalable category, as we go over them in this series, you'll see have some similar strange design choices where they kind of go like 3/4 of the way and then don't quite finish the concept all the way. So yeah, this should have had, and I get it, everyone wants their stuff to be proprietary and they want everyone to use their own thing, or they have a specific vision in mind for the carrier and for some reason only envision it being used as that specific vision, never anything else. Maybe that's just me. I don't buy into that outlook. I look at things as, how much stuff can the end user do with it? How many things can the end user, be compatible with when they buy my product? If they bought my product, I don't have a gear company right now, so I guess I shouldn't say buy my product, but if I was a gear manufacturer, I would want my products to be as compatible as possible across the greatest range of things, or alternatively, I would want things to function a certain way to ensure the best durability and capability when it's being used. And this is one of those, part of the reason why I'm starting with the Slickster is because this is such a ubiquitous plate carrier, and because this ubiquitous plate carrier that has kind of set the design standard for all other slick scalable carriers, because this doesn't do the thing, or some of the things that, in my opinion, are important for this kind of carrier. It's, I think, because everyone essentially kind of just has been kind of copying off this one over all these years so far. Not doing that has kind of, I guess, sort of opened the door for other people to feel like they don't have to do it either. Which also is kind of lame. You'd think these other companies that make similar carriers would say, let's do our carrier, a little bit better in these areas. But anyways, there you go. There's my rant for the day against the tactical gear industry, is why does everyone just copy everything when they could do it a little bit better? Anyways, that's my gripe with the back panel here. The front bag, I don't really have that much to complain about. It's it's functional enough, it's cross-compatible with enough things. The only thing I don't like, and that's kind of goes with this carrier as a whole, is the fact that because this is a single layer of material, in that the Cordura Velcro is all just kind of sewn together without a base layer of Cordura underneath it. These laser cut slots here for the buckles, therefore just will go straight into where your plate is. I mean, it's a gripe for me because that's a way, in my opinion, for extra water to get into the carrier. It also, because of these buckles here, these are the these are not correct Swift clip buckles. These are the ones that came with the HRT placard I've got that we might talk about in a later date. It can lead to these buckles kind of abrading across the front of the plate. How much abrasion or impact of these buckles on the plate could cause damage to the plate or the coating, I would think that'd be pretty unlikely, unless you maybe threw the thing across the room, in which case you have bigger problems with your plate. But I personally just, again, it's one of those little like 80-20 rule gripes where I wish they would have gone the extra 20 and made this a full Cordura backed plate bag. I also have got to agree with some other people in that I don't love the fact that Velcro makes up part of the actual main body of the carrier that the thing is relying on, both for structure as well as long-term durability, especially for the price point that this carrier is at these days. People complain about like the price of like the AC1 or whatever, but at least it's, well, we'll talk about that carrier later, but at least it's got, a layer of actual Cordura underneath the stuff that's sewn to it. So I can't say I'm in love with the fact that this is, half Velcro. The good news is the nice thick mil-spec Velcro. So it is inherently pretty durable, but it's still Velcro, not Cordura. Take that as you will. The other thing that I'll touch on is the interior being lined with this 3D mesh material. The 3D mesh material this is made out of is, it's not bad. It's a bit, if you've ever owned like a Velocity System Scarab, you know that the 3D mesh that thing is backed with is like an inch thick. It's great. This stuff is not that. It's maybe quarter-inch thick, and is also, I don't know if you can see, this is also not backed with anything. So again, the actual structural portion of this carrier is made up of the 3D mesh itself, and pretty thin 3D mesh at that. How much of a durability issue over time this is going to be is an interesting question, because this 3D mesh can get pulled and pilled with stuff. God help you get it caught on a piece of Velcro. So again, I can't say I'm a fan of that. The other thing I hear people gripe about all the time is the heat retention and sweat wicking ability of the 3D mesh. I'm 50-50 on the whole thing. I actually kind of like this stuff. I do see where people are coming from. I've owned, as of 2023, I've been through, I think, 25 carriers in like the last 12 years. And so I've had a variety of everything from stuff that's just Cordura back to 3D mesh back to whatever that slick stuff that London Bridge uses on all their carriers that I hate. I've seen and owned and used all the major backings, and To be blunt, I don't really see uh, quite the issue with the 3D mesh that some people do. I hell of a lot prefer it to the horrible, whatever that slick pack cloth stuff that LBT uses. That stuff is just horrifying if you start sweating in it, which you're gonna sweat in a plate carrier. Like, it's gonna happen. But god damn, like if you go out there on like a 80, 90 degree day and you're running around in one of those 6094s with that slick backing, oh, it's like it's the worst case of like cross between a wet t-shirt and a piece of plastic just sticking to your body. It's horrible. So this 3D mesh stuff is a hell of a big step up from that. Um, does it retain more heat? Well, I guess my question is, does it retain more heat than what? Bare Cordura, the slick nylon that LPT uses, other 3D mesh? What's the standard for, it retaining heat? Um, that's what I'd like to know. As far as what I've seen, the 3D mesh does a little bit better job of being breathable than just bare Cordura or any other kind of bare material. Now, in my opinion, the gold standard would be for the plate carrier manufacturers to ditch all this 3D mesh and stuff together, ditch all of that, go with basic Cordura on the back, and then line it with a couple rows of loop Velcro, so that then you can use an aftermarket coolant pad like a ice vent or something similar to that. All right, so on top of the 3D mesh issues that we've been talking about, the other thing I kind of want to touch on a little bit is the overall durability and comfort level of this thing. As far as the durability goes, some of the sewing on here is I guess this is kind of designed, I guess, as a light use plate carrier, but it's, well, I mean, it's kind of sewn that way too. Now, there isn't anything on it that's absolutely horrible, and I'm sure you guys aren't able to see this well from there, but like I said before, everyone knows what this carrier is, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. The stitching that is on here is done well. I don't see any loose anything. It's all nice and tight, with, have the, 1:8 ratio. It's all fine. That being said, it's, well, like a lot of carriers like this, they everything is very single stitched, and maybe this is just, I got my start in gear back in 2013, and a lot of the gear I used back then dated back to even, later, previous years, 2010, 2011, and then, stuff in the mid 2000s. So I'm very used to the gear that's available, on the civilian market being the standard, military type stuff, which is all very duty use designed. So it's all, triple stitched, bar tacked, 1,000 denier couture. So I guess a little bit of my own personal bias comes into play when it comes to some of these newer type carriers. That being said, the gripe that you're gonna, I think, see me come back to a lot throughout this entire series of reviews is I do not agree with the current fixation on just single stitching everything. I'm a huge fan of double stitching because I like the extra security and durability that it imparts to whatever is being put together. Now, some people are going to say, well, it doesn't really matter for, certain areas. And yeah, and I agree. For certain products or certain areas on certain products, you can save yourself a little time and thread to, I guess, sew it faster or whatever. Like, I don't see any benefit to not double stitching everything. But, I mean, I'm sure there's some reason why manufacturers these days feel that it is, what's the word I'm looking for? advantageous for them to skimp on the minimal bit of extra thread and the minimal bit of extra time it would take to double stitch everything. Yeah, I really don't get it. Anyways, so as you can see on the outside, everything's pretty much single stitched. I'm going to gripe about the shoulder straps a little bit here. Obviously, this is the new edition with the single long strap with the Velcro underneath it, and then it goes into the bottom here on this piece of hook Velcro inside. I actually kind of had some doubts about this system. Alright, I still would like if they had made this piece of hook Velcro in here a little bit longer, but I guess it's good enough for what this is. My gripe is whether or not the shear strength of Velcro being pulled straight up and down is going to be a problem versus, if you have overlapping shoulder straps because of the way it curves and there's pressure on the middle of it, that Velcro isn't going anywhere. So my concern originally was with the shear strength of it just being pulled straight out the back vertically. After playing around with this a little bit and putting plates in it and stuff, because the way it's designed, the plates kind of go on top of the excess straps that hang down in here, and if your plates are going to fit the carrier correctly, they all go up more or less to the top of the carrier here. Given the extra pressure between the straps and the plates in the back here, I don't think it's going to be as much of a problem as I thought in the beginning. I still, again, don't see any reason why they couldn't just stick with the double strap method because it works really well. But, go figure. I guess maybe they were looking to reduce the profile a little bit if you're going to try to wear this concealed. But I've never had a serious problem. Let's just put it, if trying to conceal a plate carrier, the double layer of Cordura or other webbing for shoulder straps has never been the biggest problem, aside from the plate themselves. But that being said, if your plates are fitting high enough up to, put some pressure on this, I don't think it's going to come off. Unless you put an absolutely insane amount of weight on the back of this thing and then just start jumping up and down like a lunatic. Maybe that way you could get it to start to unstick itself, but other than that, I think it's okay. Not my favorite system, but it'll work. The other thing that you will notice too is that this is now just a single layer of laminate backed with loop Velcro. I guess that's to attach some sort of shoulder strap to shoulder pads to this. I think that's amusing, considering they've put the consideration in place to add shoulder pads to this. They've put the consideration in place for that to be a thing, and for the type of pads that usually have a Velcro interface on the inside of them are usually the thicker, pads that you're going to use when your carrier weighs a lot. For that reason, again, I don't know why they would go to a little bit more sketchy version of strap attachment, or more importantly, this brings me right back to my gripe with the rear cummerbund and the lack of Velcro into the flap. If they're planning ahead for you to load this thing up to be heavy enough where you need full-size, thick padded shoulder pads for this thing to be comfortable, then obviously they're planning for you to use a different cummerbund because you can't fit that level of weight on a simple-ass elastic cummerbund. Clearly they're planning for you to use a full-featured molded cummerbund of some sort. In which case, why don't they have a full-size piece of Velcro in the back with the Velcro under the rear flap. That's one of those design oversights with this that just doesn't make any sense to me. And again, kind of one of the things where it's like it should be there, but it isn't. I have no idea who made the decision to not include those things, but you're planning for one thing, but you're not giving me the whole package to actually enable me to do it. Why? There you go. That's my big gripe with this. The other thing I was looking at originally too was the actual sewing of the one part of the shoulder strap that is actually stitched into the carrier, and it is very kind of if I would have liked it to be, like triple stitched or bar tacked, or alternatively double stitched here and then box stitched on the inside of it. It's not any of those things. It's, at least on the front here, from what I can see, it's single stitched and a half. What I mean by single stitch and a half is it's single stitched, but the areas on the end that are double stitched are, where you would run the threading back to tuck into itself to keep it locked in place. It's a little confusing. I'm going to go ahead and try to turn this thing inside out real quick. Give me a second. Isn't this an exciting part of a YouTube video? Oh, no one's ever done this before. It's so original. Oh my god. Quick, push the like button for this massive level of originality. Alright, let me see if I can pull one of these shoulder straps up so that you can see what it looks like on the inside. Because that's the thing I find interesting, is a lot of people don't talk about what's going on the inside of a lot of gear, which is where the sewing actually is. Most people just look at the outside of pouches or plate carriers and stuff like that, and they go, oh, it's a great stitching job. And then you turn it inside out and you realize, wow, this is like falling apart on the inside. Anyways, this Slickster is not falling apart on the inside. As I said before, the actual stitching overall is fine. It's just very single stitched, which annoys me. I like my double stitching, my triple stitching, my bar tacks. Like I like my stuff that I've paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars for to actually, seem like it's going to last a long time, not just be like, well, I think it'll work, mostly. Alright, so you might not be able to see this, but around the actual edge of the plate bags on the sides is just single stitched. It looks like the stitching just goes straight through all of the material on both sides of the carrier. The Velcro that's on the inside is double stitched, so that's great. I'm glad they did that with like the biggest piece of Velcro here, which unfortunately is, a weight-bearing part of this plate carrier. So at least they did stitch that. Hallelujah. Same thing for the upper part here. The upper part here and here is also double stitched, so that's fine. The outer edge is single stitched, which is, again, if you double stitch that, why couldn't you send the extra 5 minutes and double stitch the outside of it? I don't get it. I mean, what was that going to be, an extra 50 cents of thread? But anyways, going back to my gripe about the shoulder straps. If I can get the other one out of here. Oh my god. Bet you didn't think you were going to sit here for like 5 minutes watching some dumbass try to turn a plate carrier inside out, but here you are. Alright, I think I've got that out enough to make my point, if you can actually see it. It's a little hard to say what exactly is going on with the stitching for the shoulder straps themselves. If you look at it on the outside of the carrier, it looks like it's single stitch and a half. If you turn it out the inside, on the, well, I'll just go with what you can see on screen. The right side, it actually does look like it's double stitched. And then, as you can see on the back side of it, this the 3D mesh pad is kind of doubled over, almost like it was sewn with the strap on the other side, and then turned around and then sewn again on here. So if you look at the left side now, again it's kind of hard to see. Well, there you go. That's not too bad. We're back to it kind of being single stitch and a half. So I have no idea what's going on between the two, whether the right side is actually double stitched or just, the run back to lock the thread in place just took up more on that side than on this side. That being said, between looking at the outside of it as well as the inside here and what's going on with this pad, my gut says that the sewing on the shoulder straps is overall, cumulatively, if you count both sides of the sewing, it's cumulatively double stitched. So I think it's okay. I would have, again, preferred it to either be obviously triple stitched or bar tacked, or alternatively single and a half stitched, and then to have had the material come down further on the inside here and then box stitch it in here as well. I just feel like all those are better, more secure options than single and a half. That being said, as I just mentioned here, I think it's actually double stitched, but in a cumulative way, not an obvious way. So I think the shoulder straps on this are actually a little bit more good to go on the front than they look like at first glance. Your mileage may vary, but I think they're actually okay. Or at least acceptable enough, as long as you don't load this thing up to like 40 pounds or some ridiculous amount of weight for a lightweight carrier like this. I think it'll be okay. The final thing I want to touch on real quick here is the overall comfort level. And I gotta say, that was actually kind of surprising to me, because I thought that with this single layer of shoulder strap here would be extremely painful, to wear even with, just plates in it. But it's actually not, which is a good thing. I was actually really surprised at the amount of comfort that you can get wearing this thing. Now, I didn't have it loaded to the gills, but it was with, I'm running Hesco 3810 plates in the Sappy cut, so those are 4 pounds a piece, and then a front placard with 3 5.56 magazines in it. So you're talking, 8 pounds, 8, 9, 10, 11, let's say 12 pounds, plus the carrier, which is about another pound. So let's say 13 pounds, maybe 13 and a half all told. So not a huge amount of weight. Well, let's say 14 with the Cumberland. Not a huge amount of weight. But I did make sure to wear it without any shoulder pads because I wanted to get a fair shake at the comfort level, and it was being worn just with a flannel shirt on. A flannel shirt and a t-shirt, so no heavy clothing or anything. A lot of that comfort has to do with the angle of the shoulder straps on this thing, which is perfect. If you're familiar with the Scarab from Velocity Systems, they have those shoulder straps that they hook into those D-rings so that they will naturally angle to the contour of your shoulders. I feel like that is like the critical piece that a lot of carriers on the market, at least in the older days, just didn't quite get. And the Slickster has excellent angle to the shoulder straps. It's not too wide, and it's not the straight cut, which is just not comfortable for anything. Well, I guess some people do okay with it. It all kind of depends a little bit on the geometry of your shoulders and your overall body, but by and large, of the 20 plus carriers I've been through, the carriers that have had that just right angle to the shoulder straps have been noticeably more comfortable than carriers with a straight set of straps or less angle to it, without needing to add on any kind of shoulder pads. So because of the nice angle of this, even though it has thinner straps will kind of turn and bend off to the sides of your shoulders, over your muscles there, and that way they're not sitting straight with the edges of the straps digging straight into the sides of the muscles or your neck. That's why carriers with this angle are more comfortable than carriers with the straight straps. So even this carrier with a single layer of laminate or whatever this is and a single layer of loop Velcro was perfectly comfortable to wear for a while with 14 pounds total hanging off of them. In fact, I was trying some other carriers out on the same day that I tried this one out, and I'll get to that carrier later. But after wearing that carrier, which had a straighter shoulder strap cut, when you can tell because it's pain after like 10 minutes of wearing. You're like, all right, get it off me. This one I put on, and then I went to do a bunch of random chores and shit around the house, and I forgot I had it on. I was in the middle of of putting together a load of laundry, like probably 40 minutes or so after putting it on, and I bent over to get stuff off the floor. I was like, oh yeah, I still have this plate carrier on. Yeah. So between and another part of that comfort does come from the mesh backing that everyone likes to complain about, because outside of just straight Cordura or any other kind of non-padded material, it does do a fine job of helping the curve of your plate to sort of meld to your torso, for lack of a better term, instead of just having those sharp edges of the plate, even if it fits your torso well. Having that extra thickness here of the padded mesh backing just sort of like, think of it like pressing the plate into like a pile of like putty, right? It's not quite that stiff, but it spreads that the edge profile out and the actual pressure on your chest. Even just a simple little 1/4 inch thick bit of it does a fine job of spreading the pressure out over. Well, actually, I'll say that it's not so much spreading the pressure out. It's creating a more obtuse contour, which really helps to make it kind of gel with your torso. I'm rambling. Anyways, between the angle of the shoulder straps and the mesh backing, I was very much surprised and pleased with how much even a simple, single layer material carrier like this can be comfortable when wearing for a while. And like I said, I only had it on for about 40 minutes, but when I took it off, I was totally okay. Like, I didn't take it off and go, oh, thank God it's off. I took it off and went, gee, I could wear that for another couple hours and probably not notice it. And that was without even a single layer of shoulder pads, which is saying something, because I've had other carriers that have been, similar weights, and we'll talk about some of them later. And like I said, after a few minutes of wearing them, you're like, oh boy, I don't think I'm going to make it an hour in this, let alone an entire day. So it's one of those things where I think the magic of this carrier comes from some of the stuff that doesn't include the features. And those reasons are why this thing has caught on, more than the fact that Ferro has kind of derped out in a couple areas when it comes to the actual features. But the fact that they execute the way the thing wears over the torso so well is, I think, why it's caught on. as much as it has. So anyways, as far as where I would rate this in terms of it being really good at being both a slick/semi-concealable carrier as well as a scalable carrier, well, you're going to hear this a lot in this series, but I'd say it's half in the bag. Some of the features on it are totally fine, some of it are annoying but overlookable, and some of it are just downright dumb that they forgot or didn't include it on purpose for some reason. So there you have it. Stay tuned for the next of the plate carriers we're going to review in this series, and I hope you got something out of this. As a quick addendum at the end here for the cummerbunds, I figured I'd mention this because I know somebody's going to see this when I mentioned the Velocity Systems cummerbund before, and they're going to go, well, of course it didn't work because you used a cummerbund with a weird design, and if you put a normal cummerbund on there, it would work fine. Well, not quite. So I have one of these defense mechanisms cummerbunds, so this is a normal cummerbund with full feeds of Velcro, not, individual strips. And so this still really doesn't like compatibility with this little short 4-inch piece of Velcro on the Slickster here. Because what happens is, just for laughs, I'll stick it on there. What happens is, there's still nothing up here to engage the upper half of the Velcro, which means there's nothing up here to engage the upper half of the cummerbund, which is part of the Velcro. Even if you wrap this over it, once again, there's no Velcro on the inside of this to interface with the cummerbund on the inside of it, so there's also nothing to hold it in from the top here. So even with this wrapped around it, hold on, it's a little bit hard to explain without it having any plates in it or anything, but what happens is basically there's nothing to support the top of the cummerbund. So what you end up with is, and again, this is hard to explain without any stuff on it. What happens is, because this cummerbund it's not supported at the top here. So when you actually start to put things on it, and there's a weight on it, all that weight, the initial part of where it goes rests at the top of the cummerbund, because that's where the first strap goes, and where the most weight, where most of the pressure is on the top of the cummerbund working down. So because there's nothing at this critical top of the cummerbund to stick it in place, and then nothing here to sandwich it solidly between that, what happens is when it actually gets weight on it, it tends to want to sag out a little bit more than your average cummerbund does. I will say that this style of cummerbund with the full-size Velcro in the back does do a little bit better a job of staying in here than something like the Velocity Systems. And if you were to do a little bit of a sewing job yourself and add some Velcro to the inside of this to sandwich it in there, it wouldn't be too bad. But again, because there's nothing securing this top end, the critical first row of moly here doesn't have any structure on the rear of the plate bag. So it does lead this area back here to want to kind of sag out a bit, which doesn't do anything to help support the weight that's sitting on the top of that first couple row of moly there. So anyways, I just want to mention that as a little follow-up in case people were like, just try a different cummerbund. Well, yeah, it's slightly better than that design, but not enough for me to say the problem is solved.